Hi there, this is Dr. Evan Osar, developer of the Integrative Movement System. Welcome to video 3 of this 4-part series where I'm previewing my discussion for this year's 2023 IYCA Virtual Summit. In the first video, I shared with you just simple assessments of the thorax, the missing link to many of your athletes' shoulder and hip issues. In part 2, I showed you just a simple corrective exercise strategy using rotation as well as breathing to help reestablish more optimal alignment and control of the thoracolpelvic cylinder, the thorax over top the pelvis. In this video, part 3, I just want to show you a couple variations of patterns to train more pure axial rotation. Obviously, you know that rotation is so important for so many sports, most sports. However, many of our athletes, when they're training rotation, they're not actually getting good quality rotation. They're training rotation, they're training a lot of speed, power. However, the quality of their motion isn't always as pure or as clean as it needs to be. Let me just show you one thing I do with my athletes. So the first thing we want to do is always start with optimal alignment. So we're going to start with optimal alignment as if the head is being pulled up from the backside of the head, neck, thorax, and spine. So that way the rib cage is stacked over top of the pelvis, that cylinder is aligned. And I know if you're watching this, many people will say to me, hey, Dr. Osar, the thorax doesn't ever stay that direction when we're training rotation or when the athlete's playing sport. And I'm like, 100% agree. However, the purpose with teaching the athlete how to better align and control it is so they have access to more optimal rotation so that when they find themselves in position, so maybe they're throwing the ball down like this with their flex and their rib cage isn't aligned directly over top their pelvis, or they're reaching back to grab a ball or throw a ball in an awkward position. They have the ability to get their thorax aligned and use much more of their range of motion so that range of motion is more efficient. And think about how you want your athletes to either hit the ball or throw the ball. You want them rotating on or around that virtual axis. And yes, they will side bend. Yes, there'll be maybe a little flexion and or extension. However, you want them to be able to align that rib cage over top the pelvis and then be able to wind it up. So what we're training is the ability to align that cylinder, the rib cage over top the pelvis, and then be able to wind it effectively so that way it translates more effectively and efficiently in their rotation during their sport. So align the spine as if they're being pulled up from the backside of the head and neck, rib cage over top of the pelvis. So we're going to do a med ball chop. So what I'm going to have the athlete do is they're going to rotate, again, rotating on that axis and be very clean with that motion. And then they're going to chop down and just focus on just the rotation, maintaining the thorax over top the pelvis. So I'm teaching the athlete how to maintain that alignment. So when they're rotating through the hip, they're also rotating through the spine. However, they're staying long and they're creating the rotation of those rings, those thoracic rings over top that pelvic ring and ultimately the hip. And now if you want to make it more dynamic, obviously you make it more dynamic. So you have your athlete rotate and then throw if they need to throw the ball. So again, it's the same idea of loading up and then releasing. So that way they're getting more of that pure rotation. Resistance bands, also another great way to teach this concept. Again, lengthening through the spine, aligning the rib cage over top the pelvis. I like the rope for this pattern because it allows the arms to kind of go through more of their natural range of motion. So it's the same idea. I'm going to have the athlete step, rotate, and extend. Step, rotate, and extend. So again, the rotation is coming first through the hip, then through the lumbar spine, mostly through those thoracic rings, and then ending up in extension of the arms. Step, rotate, and again, you can make it obviously faster, and you can start to do more dynamic rotations. So it's the same concept over and over, teaching the athlete how to maintain that alignment and create that pure rotation around the hip, around the lumbar spine, most importantly, around the thorax. Maintaining that cylinder, teaching the cylinder how to get long, teaching the athlete how to get their cylinder long so they create more of that pure axial rotation that leads to more efficiency and more availability of their range of motion when they need it for their sport. So this is Dr. Evan Osar. This is part 3 of this 4-part video series. In part 4, I'm going to come back, wrap up what we talked about, and invite you to the 2023 IYCA Virtual Training Summit. If you have any questions and or comments, feel free to put them below this video. Check out the link in this video as well, and we look forward to seeing you at this year's event. Take care.